thank you so much for joining the Sue Fries Show, and I am so humbled and so happy to be with you today. I have a guest. She's been on once before, and she's here again because she was so good the first time. I just needed to hear more. So I have Kelly Bryan with me, and I know Kelly Bryan from dancing. You know, some of you that listen on a regular basis know that Sue Fries dances. It's something she does for stress relief, and it's just a passion. And any of you out there that need something to do where you just need to be social and you need to meet people and you just want to, get out and do something physical, dancing's a wonderful way to do that, whether it's line dancing, which you don't need a partner, or you want to get into partner dancing. It's a wonderful, wonderful way, a great activity, and there are so many people, and it's a great community. It's like a second family, isn't it, Kelly?
It is, for sure.
Yeah, so welcome again, Kelly.
Thank you.
To the show. And, the first time around, if you missed her the first time, you'll have to go back into the Sue Fries podcast and listen to the first show because it was wonderful. But we're going to talk about some other things that have happened or happening in Kelly's life. And the reason we do this on the Sue Fries show is because we want to bring help to the helpless, hope to the hopeless. And if ever a story can inspire or encourage another, isn't that a wonderful thing? And so that's what we're trying to do today. And so today, Kelly's going to talk about, she's very pregnant, and we are filming TV right now and radio because Sue Fries has a TV show, and obviously you're listening to the radio show. So she's very pregnant right now, and she's adorable pregnant. And recently, what I'm going to put up on the Sue Fries site, you have to go there and look at this, is there's a video of Kelly and her husband dancing. And she's dancing very pregnant. And I'm not going to give you any more information. You're just going to have to go and watch it for yourself. It's going to go viral. I just know it is. So you're going to have to watch. But it's wonderful because pregnancy is a beautiful thing. And Kelly is just shining and glowing like pregnant women do. And she danced so gracefully with this extra weight in the front. And from the back, you can't even tell she's pregnant. But from the front, you definitely can tell she's pregnant. Anyway, so we're going to talk today about another segment or another time in our life because we all have different seasons. And, we have good seasons and we have bad seasons. And it's not that we have them, it's what we do with them and what we learn, the lessons that we learn. Right, Kelly?
Yes.
So Kelly's going to talk today. So we'll just get started. We'll just dive right in. How's that?
Sounds great.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit, just to give those that didn't hear the first show, about the background of your first marriage and choices and things like that. And then we'll move into, kind of where you are now and where you've been. Okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So go ahead and just share with the audience.
Yes, just to recap from last time that we spent time together. I was a very A-type, good girl student all the way through school, ended up in college on a full ride scholarship, graduated pretty much straight A's from college with a degree in geology from UC Riverside, had $20,000 in the bank, no debt. I saved myself for marriage. I ended up meeting someone while I was in college, and we got married, and I felt like I had done all the right things that they say: go to college, save money, blah, 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 all that. And I found myself very quickly in a very different situation that ultimately ended up with my now ex-husband in prison for some bad business practices, and I found myself at risk for arrest, and I ended up having to file bankruptcy, and it was just a really bad time. Back taxes were owed that I had to pay, and it was a bad time. But I eventually got through that. That's kind of what the first show talked about, making the best out of all that and getting yourself through some challenging times. So I found myself on the other side of that. But as part of that, I would actually visit him in prison every Friday night. That was my ritual to ask questions about what I had found in the last week. And finally, after months and months of my Friday night being taken up with prison visits, which I never in a million years imagined that would be me going to prison every Friday night as my night out. Eventually, I found that I didn't need to go anymore. I had all my answers. Everything was on track for getting things fixed, I guess you could say. And I was looking for something fun to do. So now I'm in my late 20s, early 30s, and I'm not a bar person or a club kind of person. So I didn't really know where to be spending my time and making new friends and things, because most of my friends are married with kids and it's a different life.
Yeah,
right?
and that's tough. And there's a lot of people in that situation right now that are probably listening, and it is a difficult time when you know, most of your friends are in a different place in their lives than you are. And so what do you do with your time?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they were still very much a support system and wonderful to me and important to me, but I'm not going to be going out on Friday nights with them.
Right.
They've got husbands and kids
Yeah.
and
You'd
things to do.
Right,
Yeah.
the odd man out, yes.
So through kind of a strange way, I found myself at a country bar
Right.
with some kind of new friends, and immediately was drawn into line dancing because it probably sounds terrible, but you don't need a boy to do it. You can just go out and dance, and I had a wonderful time. And while it was at a bar, you know, the country bars are very
Right.
different than like the clubs in LA.
They are definitely different.
Very different feel. And
Yes.
there's a contingent that goes to drink and stuff,
Right.
but there's also a contingent that goes to dance.
Right.
And that's what I started doing. At first, I tried to scrounge up people to go with me, and eventually got to the point where I'd just show up and I knew enough people there that it was like a little dance family, like you
Right.
said before.
It is.
So I started dancing there, and eventually found out that you can actually compete as a in couples or even in line dancing. But I started finally partner dancing, so
Right.
got into like two-step and things like that, and found out that you could take classes on this. So a guy actually came to me and said, "You girls are all terrible here. You're terrible at dancing. There's people that are much better than you at this, and you can take classes. You should take classes." So while that was very rude, what it led me to were some classes where I got better and eventually started competing. And it's how I met my now husband. So he was actually my judge. Yeah, as I was competing in a division called Newcomer. So I was a brand new baby dancer, and it was right here in Pomona. And that's where we met. So
Wonderful story.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. And so he actually found me on Facebook and asked me some very just benign questions. It was, do you have other dance training? And I see you're a geomorphologist. And then it kind of led to discussions from there, but just really above board friendly discussions.
Right.
And then I saw him at a few more dance events, and within a couple months we were in love, and within 6 months we were engaged, and within 11 months we were married. So on the
Wonderful story.
on
Yes.
the backside of just this really bad experience with my first marriage that
Right.
just took a lot out of me, there was just this really fantastic year in my life where just things seemed to fall into place. And we both really, really wanted children. Mm-hmm. So we got on that right away. And I actually got pregnant the week of our wedding.
Wow. That's
And
pretty
so-
fast.
Yes. And
Yes.
so I felt like that was a message, like that God had put everything in place. And it was a message saying, now you're on the right track and everything. You're going to get some easy times for a while. And we actually were on our honeymoon 6 or 8 weeks later, and I miscarried on the plane on the way to our honeymoon.
Oh, my goodness.
And so it was really hard. That week, we had a beautiful vacation in the BVI on a sailboat, just the two of us. And it was a time of healing and trying to understand what was happening. It was just really hard
Right.
because we wanted that so bad, and I felt like that it was all fitting together. And when you think, oh, look, I get to have an easy downhill for a while, sometimes you don't. Sometimes the next thing comes up. And
Right.
so that was a really tough, week. But we also had a really good time, too. I look back at the pictures, and we're happy. My husband's awesome.
You had a little time to
So,
heal.
we did.
Just together, the two of you.
Yes.
And, those that don't understand miscarriage, which we don't understand why it happens or, why God, and maybe in heaven we'll know, right? But I have a friend who had this happen, and I just remember that it was so painful. And at the time, I just reunited with this friend from church, and I told her that the reason I didn't connect with her is I really just did not know what to say. I did not know how to deal with it. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't say anything. And looking back, that's really not the right thing to do. It's just I didn't know. And I told her that, and she gave me a big hug with tears rolling down her eyes. And
Yeah.
she just said, thank you for that, because it is something where somebody that's never been through it doesn't understand. And that's one of those things that I have not. I've experienced quite a few things, but that's not one of them.
Yeah.
But I know that it just must be so devastating. Not only the actual physical, but just the emotional and the heart behind the whole thing must be devastating.
Yeah, it was really hard. And sometimes the right thing to say is, I don't know what to say.
Right.
Or there are no words. That's
Right.
a great phrase because it's true. Sometimes there's nothing to say.
Yeah.
But saying that is helpful, that
Right.
we know that you care.
Right.
So,
Right. This show is for you. I pray before I get on the show. We all pray before we get on the show because we want the Lord to work through us as open vessels to be used for His glory. And the main purpose is, if you're feeling down, just know that you're not alone. And if you're going through something, just like what Kelly is experiencing or explaining right now, is that, that's not something I know anything about, but Kelly does. And so she's sharing her story with you because we don't want anyone to feel alone, isolated, that, you don't have to go through this alone. That's what God's there for. And He puts people in our paths, even for a time, to just get us through a tough time. So Kelly's here right now to tell us about this. Maybe, if there's just one person listening that has experienced this, which I'm sure there are, because this is very common.
yes, much
Very-
more common than people
talk.
realize.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, I'm sorry if this has happened to you. I really am. My heart goes out to you. And words, there are no words. There truly aren't. So continue on with your story.
So, of course, we went to the doctor to try to kind of figure out what happened. And they and it's true most of the time. There's no reason that they know. Just sometimes something doesn't develop right and the pregnancy just ends. And they're very clinical about that because they see it a lot more than we obviously do as individuals. But my doctor, I remember him very clearly saying, you will be pregnant again. You'll have a baby. I know it. And so don't worry about it. So give your body a couple months. That's what we did. Waited 3 months, and I got pregnant the very first try, the second time that we tried to get pregnant. And so I thought, okay, that was just a little speed bump. This is going to be okay. And then 5 or 6 weeks later, or at the 5-6 weeks mark, we lost that pregnancy as well. So that was hard. Like, okay, well, now we're on the path to this being a pattern and not just a one-off.
Right.
And the doctors were kind of still like, oh, well, we don't do anything until there are 3 in a row is when we start to investigate.
Okay.
Well, in the meantime, my now wonderful husband, Jeremy, was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So, which now knowing what we know, the thyroid cancer is like the kind you want if there's a kind of cancer that you want to have. But at the time, it was very scary. And so we talked to my doctors and said, well, we're kind of on hold because didn't want to bring a baby into the world if something was going to happen to my husband, and I'm very practical that way. And so can we please have all the testing done early, like now, even though we only had 2 miscarriages only, right?
Right.
And so they said, sure. So tested me, everything came back fine. So that was good. And then my husband got through his battle with thyroid cancer, and we were cleared to, okay, let's try this again. So then once again, the very first month, we got pregnant again. So it just seemed like, okay, well, this time it's going to be fine. And we got to the 11-week mark, which is so close to where they say, yeah, everything is fine.
3 months, right?
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, we lost that pregnancy as well. And that one was really bad because the later you lose it, the worse it is just on you
Right.
physically and emotionally because you've started getting excited. We'd seen
Right.
a heartbeat. You'd seen all those things.
Yes.
And so then the doctors really don't have any answers. So they turn you over to a specialist. And at this point, we hadn't talked to my family about these things because they tell you, don't tell anybody until you're in your
Right.
second trimester.
Right.
Well, when you don't tell anybody, there's nobody there to share the hard part with you if
Right.
it doesn't make it to the second trimester.
Right.
So that message, it's a double-edged sword.
Yes.
So now we brought my family into it. People were great. My parents were great. My brother and sister were great to have that support. And so we eventually started going to a specialist, and they send you to a fertility clinic. And when you think fertility clinic, you think you can't get pregnant, right?
Right.
And so this was just a hard thing to accept that I have a problem and I need someone to help me with this. And through the fertility clinic, we learned that I have a blood clotting disorder, And it's an uncommon one that was not caught in the first round of testing, because they typically do not test for that in the first round because it is so uncommon. So with that and a few other things, we were cleared with some medication, a blood thinner, so an injection I do 1 or 2 times a day to keep my blood thinner. And we got pregnant again. I think it was the first month still this time as well. And then at the 5 or 6 week mark, we lost that pregnancy also.
Oh my goodness.
So now I thought, well, they have the answer and it's still not working. And now I'm getting older. Now I'm in my mid-30s, and all of a sudden you're scary as a pregnant person.
Right.
When you're in your mid-30s. So we have another round, and something told me to go see an acupuncturist. It was just a weird feeling I had. So I did, and she got me on the path to see a reproductive immunologist. And he found that I also have an autoimmune disorder. So now I have a blood clotting disorder and an autoimmune disorder, and so I'm on a different path for medication. And unfortunately, that medication is not covered by insurance, and it was extremely, extremely expensive. But we chose to go ahead and go down that path as well. I got pregnant on the 3rd month of trying this time, and I actually went in for the very first ultrasound, and the doctor was like, "Oh, yeah, there's a heartbeat. Oh, by the way, there are 3 of them."
What? Oh, my word.
And this was not with IVF. This was crazy. And Jeremy and I were both like, what are we going to do with 3? So, and the doctor's like, yeah, this very rarely happens. Like, well, no kidding.
Oh my goodness.
So there were 3. That pregnancy was very healthy, and we got to week 9 and we had lost 2 of them. And so that was terrifying, because now I'm thinking, great, at what point are we going to lose the 3rd one? It's just a matter of time. But in August of 2014, we had a little girl named Kennedy. And so she made it out. She was a strong one.
So one of 3.
One of the 3
Wow.
made it out.
See, I did not know that.
Yeah, most people...
Now that's different. That's not something that happens
right.
very often.
Yeah. And
Yes.
we knew baby... They letter them A, B, and C. We knew baby C was having a little bit of difficulty from the very beginning. The sac was small, even though the baby was growing at the right rate. But baby A and B looked great. So on the week when we had lost baby A and C, it was just scary. It was a scary time.
Do you lean on scriptures?
Yes.
Is there scriptures that you have memorized that you lean on?
Yep. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's the one that I will never forget. I learned it forever ago.
Yes, and I lean on that one quite often. Yes. When everything is going not the right way, it's like, okay, this is beyond my strength.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So baby Kennedy is now how old?
She is now 2, and she'll be 2.5 in January.
Okay.
So she's doing great, and she's, even with all my medication and everything, because I was on daily twice a day injections into my abdomen for the blood thinner and baby aspirin. Not
Who's
a big
doing
deal.
those shots?
So this is fun.
Oh.
So I don't know. I did the one of them every day, and then I felt like Jeremy should be part of the fun, so he got to do the one every night. So I would do the morning ones, he would do the evening ones. I felt like fair is fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we split the duty on that.
Can I wind back a little bit? Sure. Because when you met Jeremy and you talked, I'm sure there was this trust factor. Your red flag kind of, you're questioning you and your decision-making power.
Yes.
And here's Jeremy, and you're going, okay, I don't want to make another mistake, so how do I make sure? How did you do that?
Well, and it's funny you say that, because
tough.
With my first husband, we dated for almost 3.5 years before I got married.
And you got married really quick.
Jeremy was 11 months.
I know.
And I could not get married fast enough. And part of that was that we both really, really wanted children. And there's only a certain window in which a woman can do that, unfortunately.
Yes, that's true.
That's the way it is. But I just knew, and I know that sounds so bad. But I just knew he was the right one. everything clicked together. I didn't have any of the red flags where I was modifying stories to be like, oh, well, you know, I could tell everybody 100% about him, about us, about our journey together.
You didn't have to hide anything.
No. And we were dating long distance because he was only, when I met him, he was down here for a dance event.
Right.
He lived in Reno.
Oh.
And yeah, so it was crazy because we only saw each other every other weekend, but I just knew. And we talked so much over the phone and through Skype and through email. And I think that actually helped us get to know each other better because you really get to know each other emotionally and mentally so much better without physical contact of any kind, really. Like we spent so much time apart.
Right.
And I felt like we got to where I wanted to be within 6 months that some people take years to get there. He was so open and honest. I was the same. We just ripped off our skin and said, this is who I am.
Right.
So if both people do that, time doesn't necessarily matter as much.
Right. Is there another lesson in there for those listening as far as, you know, maybe somebody else is struggling with getting pregnant? What would you say to them?
So one of the big things is I think you have to be an advocate for yourself. So sometimes it takes several doctors to get to where you need to be. And the doctors kind of treat you like like a list of check boxes. They can't help it. It's scientific. It's the way it works. But I had gut feelings about things that we pursued more heavily than maybe other people would. And we really were advocates for ourselves. I had a whole file that, you know, cataloged what doctors had told us and test results so that every doctor had the whole picture. And I was not quiet sometimes about how I felt about things and what I thought the next thing should be and what I was willing to do and what I wasn't willing to do. And Jeremy, and I should say we, because Jeremy was very involved in the whole process. He's been wonderful. I know some husbands don't understand how hard a miscarriage can be on your body and your brain, and he was the whole time, just equally invested in same amount of emotion and the same thing with a pregnancy, just putting the same amount of effort in every appointment he would be at. It was, but we really had to be advocates for ourselves through the whole process.
That's very good advice, and so many people just kind of take a doctor's view as being the view, and you know, they must be right because they have the doctor, you know, in front of their name,
right?
DR. But nobody knows your body better than you do, and you know, like if somebody gets injured, you know, I don't know how much they hurt. You know, you go into emergency and they'll say, your pain threshold is from 1 to 10. Where are you, right?
On the smiley face chart.
Yeah. Right? And kind of our emotions and everything, they play a part in all of it. It's not all the scientific facts, but it's also, there's a lot of other things that play into that. And our mindset has a lot to do with everything, right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying right now as far as being an advocate is so true. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable with something, then, you know, second opinion would be in order. And you said also about acupressure.
Oh, acupuncture,
yes. That's really important that you look at, maybe there's another avenue that maybe we're not even looking at.
Yeah, there's the whole Eastern versus Western medicine, and I really think that you can blend both of those. Now, that's my personal feeling about it. Everyone has a different, but that's what I felt, and that's what worked for us, was to do a combination of both. And
so would you say your relationship, your marriage is stronger?
Oh, yes. I feel like a lot of marriages would not have lasted that first year with the losses and the cancer, and there were some grandparents that passed away. My husband's dad passed away in that year. I didn't even talk about that. So lots of funerals, and just, it was a hard year, and we really just seemed to get closer each time.
As a married couple going through all of this, what advice would you give to married couples? What advice? What's the glue? What's holding you together?
Just staying really open, the same way that we kind of just exposed ourselves to each other, like, this is who I am. I think we continue to do that. And it's cliche, and a lot of people say it, but the communication is just so important. Like, I rarely think, oh, gee, I wonder what he's feeling like today or whatever. You know, I think we're very much on the same page all the time. And I know a lot of your audience probably has read The 5 Love Languages. It's a great book. And
great book.
Yes. And we really do, when I started dating him, he said, "You have to read this book. Like, this is, I won't date you unless you read this book."
That's
and it was
awesome.
like the first, and I said, "Okay, but you have to read it too," because he had read it, but like a couple years before.
Right.
So we read it together and talked about. So we still check in on each other and are very familiar. And that book is kind of a big part of our hand guide to
Absolutely.
each other.
So if you don't know what she's mentioning right now, if you go to Sue Fries, spelled like fries, one word.com, there is a Sue Fries TV. If you go on there, there's a video. I'm riding a unicycle, and I am talking about the 5 love languages while I'm riding the unicycle, and I'm explaining the different languages and how we speak in our own language. It's very interesting, and if you don't understand all of this, that's okay. Just go buy the book, and is it by Chapman?
Yeah, I think
Gary
yes,
Chapman.
That's right.
The 5 love languages, and it's excellent not only for your spouse relationship, but any relationship. Your children also. I've had both my children read the book, just to understand them and how to talk in their language, and for them to understand yours. So it's really important to do that. Where was God in all of this?
So that's a good question. Sometimes it felt like he was really far away. I think I was affected more by this than actually all the crazy things that happened in my first marriage, because those things I felt like I had things I could do to keep step. I felt like I was getting a better direction from him. And there was a lot that was left up to the medical community or trying to figure out our path. I just felt more lost at times. But what I will say is that I think that overall for Jeremy and I both, we feel much closer, and I never doubted, but it's just reaffirmed my belief in him. And I can't describe it. It was having a child's a very emotional thing. And I look at our daughter and I look at the journey that we've had and I look at Jeremy and I can't imagine there not being a God.